I would like to welcome everyone back to the big group. I will welcome you back on 1, on 2, on 3. And welcome back to our community. As we go into this special plenary, I was so excited to see this plenary on the agenda because, as we have talked about, it is so important in the world of addressing vaccine-preventable disease and immunization policy and advocacy. It's so important that we are clear on the what, on the data, on the science, on all of those things. Also, we've established that it's really important that we have command of not just what we talk about, but how we talk about it. That communication science, that methodology that I talked about this morning. A couple of really powerful elements, some very powerful tools for you to be able to use as you were talking about the story that is so critical to getting action on immunization and on curing vaccine and on addressing vaccine preventable disease are speech acts. How we speak about things matters. And just very quickly, before we go into our stories, I want to help frame your listening for these stories in terms of a powerful tool that you'll be able to take away here. Okay? So lots of different ways that we speak, and one of the most important things that we use are assertions. These are the data-driven New York facts about anything, and what they do is they shape our thinking. So all of the statistics that you heard earlier this morning, the trends, the graphs, all of that data forms the way we think about things. Very powerful. And there are also assessments, what we think about the data, how we feel about the data, what we believe about the data. And while assertions form our thinking, assessments ground our action. We want to believe that we are acting on the assertions, but most often we are acting on what we think and believe about the data. And these assessments are fueled by our emotions. We see it again and again and again. And emotions are not just feelings. Even the word emotion, the Latin root means that which sets us in motion, that which we act on. Motivation and emotion come from the same root. So we want to believe that we are driven by the data, but the fact is we are driven to action by our belief in that data, and that is fueled by our emotions. And if you don't believe me, think about it. How many of you in the room are married? How many of you are married? Okay? How many of you have been married more than once? Okay? You are not data-driven people, okay? We are not, because if we constructed marriage based on the data in America, do you know what it would look like? I think it would look like 5-year contracts with annual renewable options, okay? Everybody would have to reapply for their position every year, right? But that's not what we do, because we are also fueled by emotion, right? It is a fact. Witness the response to Ebola. We are fueled by emotion, but that is not necessarily a bad thing. We get afraid of that, and we try to avoid emotion, we try to run away from it, we try to control it, because we know that in the face of powerful emotion, something is about to go down. Look at the language we use when we're pushing someone's buttons, right? Why? Because when you push a button, something happens. That is the language we use. The importance here is we know that the decision to immunize, the decision to vaccinate, is shrouded in emotion. So it is critical for us to be able to understand emotion so that we can use it to our advantage to help understand and promote right action, to help ground the data, the assertions, in the right set of emotions so that we choose the buttons we push. We can choose the buttons that we push. So as you're listening to these stories today that are shrouded in fact, statistics, you've heard the statistics that ground these stories. I also want you listening for the emotion. Here's how I would invite you to listen. I want you to identify some of the dominant emotions that you're hearing, what actions the speakers were moved to take, What emotions are surfacing for you? And what actions do they move you to take? Emotions predispose you to a certain set of actions. Choosing the buttons that we want to push to make us better at getting the actions we want to see in addressing vaccine-preventable disease. That is the listening into which I invite our speakers to speak. Okay? So, to hear these stories and ready to listen to these stories, I invite up Rachel Cunningham to introduce our speakers and to hear their stories. Rachel.
Thanks for that. Thanks, Jamie, for starting that. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I'm really, really honored to be here and to be moderating this session. This is a topic that is really near and dear to my heart and my work, and about which I'm really passionate. We are fortunate today to hear from several families and individuals who have been affected by vaccine-preventable diseases. Speaking today, you're going to hear Micah Kramer and Jamie Schanbuam, who are up here with me. Micah lost his nearly 10-year-old daughter, Chloe. He almost lost her last year to the flu, and we actually have Chloe up here today. So I don't know, Chloe, if you want to kind of give everybody a wave. She might be regretting her choice to sit up here. But, and of course, many of you know Jamie. Jamie nearly lost her life to bacterial meningitis several years ago. But I also want to acknowledge one other person that's here today, somebody that you'll see in the videos that you're about to watch. Mr. Greg Williams is here. Greg, I know you're going to hate me for this later, but if you could stand up, please. Greg is the father of Nicholas Williams, and Nicholas lost his life to bacterial meningitis a few years ago, and he's going to be, you'll see Greg and pictures of Nick in the videos that you're about to see. But you're going to hear from Chloe, Micah, Greg, JB throughout this session, and you're going to experience firsthand the power of a story. And let me tell you, it is very, very powerful. I can tell you from personal experience, having been the person to go to these people's living rooms and their homes and hear their stories and capture it, that it just never leaves you. It changes your life, and their stories continue to haunt you as you go on and do your work. They serve as the single greatest reminder of why we do what we do. And so I'm really happy for you to be able to hear them. I'm glad they're here to tell them. Oftentimes you hear me telling their stories, but I'm really glad they're here to tell you themselves. And utilizing storytelling in your immunization education and outreach can be really powerful. It can often bridge the gap between what the science tells us and what the emotion that parents feel when they make the decision to immunize. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Micah Kramer. Oh, yes. First, we're going to start with the video. If you can go ahead and play that.
Chloe was 9 years old and a healthy child when she got diagnosed with the flu. And last year she did not get the flu shot in time.
Emily was my first girl.
She was 3.5, just super healthy, super active.
Billy was 13 years old and was a little sick, so we took him to the doctor, and the doctor did the test and said, yes, he has the flu.
She got sick. She was at the doctor the next day. They did a test and said she has the flu.
I never thought it was going to be as bad later on as it was.
About 4:30 in the morning, he could not breathe.
That's a panic moment. That's when you can't breathe. That was the biggest thing for me. That's the only thing I could focus on.
I grabbed him and drove to the closest hospital.
That Sunday, we were up with her, and she just seemed like she got sicker. So in the morning, we're like, okay, the minute that doctor's office opens, we're gonna call. We called and they said, bring her in. I can't remember the exact time, but we'll squeeze her in 11:30 or 12. I gave her a shower and cleaned her up, put her in pajamas, and put her in the bed watching cartoons. And you were kind of getting ready and doing different things like laundry.
Getting dressed and came back up.
And then
she was just laying there. I mean, it was very clear that, something was wrong. And, you know, I kind of said Emily, and then I screamed for Joe. And basically, we grabbed the phone. You were coming up. I called 911. Joe started giving CPR.
At about 2 in the morning, she said she couldn't breathe. I don't think it took 2 or 3 minutes. I called 911 and they said, we'll be there in 15 minutes, and I knew I didn't have that time.
We knew something was bad.
We're in just complete disbelief. This is the flu. And your son's in there, Billy's in there dying from it.
This all just happened so quickly and turned our whole world upside down.
From getting off the school bus to in the hospital in a coma that quick. I remember that. They said, I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to put your son in a drug-induced coma so he can fight this. You know, come talk to him.
I got in touch with Micah. He came to the hospital. The whole day was a whirlwind.
I remember the pressure mask thing wasn't helping.
I saw a tear in her eye, so I went back and I just went like that. And I just told her it was gonna be okay.
I don't know what happened. She couldn't take it anymore. And she called me to talk to me and pull my hair. I had a necklace and she grabbed it and I got really scared. I thought that was it.
Your fears are kind of hitting you and you think the worst, you know, as a parent. You're just like, am I ever gonna talk to my child again?
They told us right away, this is a very, very sick, you know, little girl.
And they're like, there's no brain activity. And we just said, you know, we just want to go and be with her.
And so we basically said goodbye, you know.
When they're telling you this, you kind of feel like it was so surreal.
We drove home without her, which is very weird. And we had to bury her. We had to adjust to life without her.
The next 2 months, it was every day he's fighting for his life. And they would start off every morning and say, look, Billy is the sickest kid in this hospital. And they were preparing us for the worst.
I remember him opening his eyes the first time. And he couldn't talk because he still had the ventilator. And, you know, we weren't sure. Sorry. We weren't sure if he would even be mentally okay. I whispered, I love you, in his ear, and he mouthed, I love you back.
Your children are born and you envision, you know, this 10 years, 20 years. You know, we had a lot of plans. And then all of a sudden it just stops. Then you don't have a past and you don't have a future and you don't have a present with them.
I could never imagine her getting that sick that quick.
You don't ever think the flu is gonna get to the point where you're gonna lose a child over the flu.
I know friends that have had the flu, but they just stayed at home.
The flu before, I never thought of it as being serious. I thought like, oh, you get it, you stay home for a week, you miss school, like you'd be all happy about that. But after I got it, I realized how much more serious it became, like how it could actually affect you and how it could actually start, I guess, to be blunt, like to kill you.
A normal flu happens to a bunch of people all the time, but you never know if you're gonna be the one who's gonna really get hurt by it.
My daughter isn't here, okay? I had to put her in a box and bury her. Everyone has access to hear what can happen, and the vaccines are effective.
Why not get a flu shot? Like, why would you put yourself at risk?
I don't think the flu is something that you want to mess with or take lightly.
Prevent what's preventable.
Get vaccinated for influenza.
Protege tu familia.
Ponte la vacuna contra la gripe.
Please, get your flu shot.
Well, now I know why Chloe said on the way down here, Dad, you better tell some jokes. Well, it's an honor and a privilege for us to be here today with you, and we just thank you all for being here, and thank you to the Immunization Partnership, Anna and Rachel and Robin and so many others that we've met today and have spoiled us rotten since we walked in the door, and we're just very blessed and thankful to have the opportunity to even share the story in the way we get to share it. Because a year ago, we were hit by something that we never saw coming. And typically we were a pretty healthy family. We always did what we had to do. And our attitude on vaccines was really more of, well, if we get around to it, we get around to it. It's not, we didn't take it that seriously. We didn't think we needed to. And so, but we always did it. We always got the flu shot. Last year, for whatever reason, it was beginning of November and we still hadn't gotten vaccinated. And obviously, we learned a big lesson from that. On November 15th, we were camping with friends. This is just a year ago. And we were having a good time. And Chloe woke up that Saturday morning and she was just vomiting like I'd never seen anyone. I mean, she hadn't even eaten breakfast. There was nothing for her to be vomiting, but it was amazing what was going on. I'm like, whoa. And so I knew something was wrong. I didn't know, what. So I called her mom and she went home, and the next couple of days she was pretty much just curled up in a ball, and we were just trying to help her be comfortable and, give her lots of liquid. And she went in for testing. She tested negative to influenza, which was odd considering what we found out a few days later. And then on Tuesday night, in the middle of the night, she woke up and she woke her mom up and just said, I can't breathe. And at first, I think her mom kind of thought she was maybe messing with her or joking, and then she realized pretty quickly that no, Chloe was really struggling to catch her breath. And so she, like she said in the video, she dialed 911, and they told her they were going to be there in like 3 days, and we didn't have 3 days, so just kidding. It was 15 minutes. But when you're a parent and that's going on, like, time is not the same as it is every day, And so I think she grabbed the little one, put her over her shoulder, and they rushed out to the hospital. And I live about 3 miles down the road, and I didn't hear the phone. I guess I didn't have my ringer on or something. So I woke up in the morning and had about 17 missed calls, and I knew right away, I'm like, that's not good. And so I called her back, and she was in the ER with Chloe at St. Luke's in the Woodlands. And I got over there as quick as I could, and they were transferring her immediately to Texas Children's, which is one of the first blessings that we're able to get to a facility like that. And I know that this story probably would have been different had we lived in another town, had we not, been able to get to a world-class hospital like that. But still, we didn't know what was wrong, and no one could tell us. And so that Wednesday, when she was in the hospital, was like the longest day of my life. And as a Christian, you get tested, you go through a trial like that and you start asking questions, and there really aren't a whole lot of answers. You just have to go on faith. You have to walk blindly for a while. And so we did a lot of praying and a lot of just begging, for God to spare her and for us to figure out what was going on. And she slipped into full respiratory failure about 3 o'clock in the afternoon that day. I was actually about to leave and go get Brooke from school, and because it was about a 30-minute drive. And so I was downstairs, and the valet guys for some reason couldn't find my car, and now I know why, because I wasn't supposed to leave. My phone rang, and it was a frantic Myra calling me and saying, you got to get back up here, and she could barely talk. And I was like, oh my God, like, what happened? We just lost her, But there she is. So, thank you. So I ran back upstairs, and they had cleared out the room, and there was probably 30 medical professionals in the room. I couldn't get in there if I even wanted to. And the chaplain had showed up, and I'm like, no, that's not a good sign. And so we just went through that process. And then the social worker showed up, and like, that's not a good sign. And so, we're trying to get answers and going through that. That was a crazy day as a parent. I mean, I don't know if anybody in the room has experienced that with a friend, a family member, or yourself. But I know we all have families. We all have, those personal tragedies and relationships, and they really test you. And so I'll fast forward a little bit. When we got to, when she was checked into the PICU, we moved from full intubation, because she had pneumonia, she had pneumothorax, she had holes in her lungs. I mean, the respirators weren't even, or the ventilators weren't even helping her. They were actually causing more damage. And so I just remember saying a prayer and asking God for clarity and vision, and just like, please, like feeling like Moses here, standing at the Red Sea going, I don't know what we're going to do now. And I just needed that to open up, and so I could see exactly what I needed to do as a dad, and as looking out for her. And Myra and I were divorced a couple years before that, and we were kind of not in great terms, and then all this happened. So there's another issue that you have to deal with, and you're kind of smacked in the face about get yourself out of the way and be a parent. And so I was a little nervous about how this is all going to work. We're dealing with Chloe's life and potentially her death, and so I just prayed for that clarity. And when we sat down with the experts in that room, and it's so surreal because you don't even feel like you're in your own skin. You feel like you're somebody else, like you're living in a movie or something. And there was probably 5 or 6, 2 of the top doctors and a couple of the nurses and one of the ECMO specialists, I don't even know what that, I know ELMO, I don't know ECMO. But we learned a lot of new things. And in that meeting, it was basically, my question was, look, are we throwing a Hail Mary pass here, or are we going to punch it in from the 2-yard line? Because that's the language I could speak. I could speak sports. So just make this simple for us, right? And in that moment, when we were making that decision of what to do, keep her on the ventilator, intubated, or put her on ECMO, which is not as well known. There's, just like anything you read on the internet, there's good, bad, and ugly, right? And so you get on the internet, and then there's horror stories that you start coming across. I'm like, no, we're not going to go on Google, because Google's not always true. So we decided to go with it. And what happened was Myra got up and left the room, and she just put her hand on my shoulder, and she said, this one's on you. I can't do this. And I was like, wow, well, there's the Red Sea opening up, because now there's no battle. It's just my decision. So I knew, I appreciate that. So in that moment, I knew that we needed to go the ECMO route, even with the risks, even with what could happen. And Dr. Thomas was so, we just heard a little bit about communication and how important it is. And one thing that he did was he really related to us and connected with us. And one of the things he said was, hey, I have a patient that 9 months after was running cross-country races. And that little statement right there just gave me enough hope, which is what I was looking for. I needed hope. And I said, okay, let's do it. So the procedure went well, and 4 days later, they let her wake up, and she was still on ECMO. She had the apparatus in her neck, and the lung machine was acting as her lungs while they let them heal, and her lungs started to heal, which is amazing. And we knew we were going to turn the corner, because it was actually my birthday, and she woke up and she looked me in the eye, and we talked about this. She said she couldn't see a whole lot, but she could see my eyes, and she said, Dad, you got the biggest blueberry eyes I've ever seen. And that was it. We knew we had turned the corner, and from that moment, everybody that walked in and out of that room pretty much could smile, and we knew she was going to come home. We knew she was going to make it. And so that was a huge turning point. And so then it was on to physical therapy, and I can actually show you a couple of things. So then we had some of those smiles, and she started doing physical therapy things like artwork, and she's coming back to us, like our little girl was coming back, because you all know you're in the profession, so you deal with different situations every day. And, I think overall our hope is that you can take this story and Jamie's story and Greg's story and go out and communicate to people through our story. Like, you can bet we all got our flu shots in like September this year. So it's just one of those things that we don't recommend that you mess with it. And I have a lot of friends that have different opinions about things, but you got to go with what's best for you and your family, and you got to go off your own experience. And we certainly are blessed and grateful and just humbled at the opportunity that we can go out and kind of pay it forward, because the Bible says that to whom much is given, much is required. So this is the least that we can do to kind of, there's Megan, she was Chloe's favorite nurse at Texas Children's. So just being able to, share this and go forward. I'm really proud of Chloe. She's a great kid. She's a great student. She missed a lot of school, and she got back in there and didn't even miss a beat. And that was pretty amazing, because I think she was out of school like almost 2 full weeks. And, it was a lot of blessings in our story. Family came from all over the world to be a part of, to kind of support us. We had friends and just different people from churches all over the world. We had from as far as like Korea and Dubai and Australia, people writing and saying that there's this church praying for you and that church praying for you. And it was amazing. I mean, I'm not a preacher, so I'm not here to preach to you, but I just thought it was really cool that all over the world we had support from people we'd never met. And it was powerful. It was definitely life-changing for me, sort of set my priorities in line very quickly. But I'm just grateful that we were able to get Chloe here today to share this with you. And yes, she is missing school, but I figured since she missed 2 full weeks last year, she can miss a day this year. It won't. So maybe you'll get to hear from her a little bit later. But as I mentioned, we're just blessed and honored to be here today. And again, I thank you all for your time today. God bless you.
Thanks, Micah. You'll see what I'm talking about now. So now I'd like to introduce Jamie Schanbuam, who's up here. We're going to watch her story as well as Greg and the Williams family story. Jamie, many of you know and are familiar with her story, but if you know her, she's a pretty incredible young lady, and she survived bacterial meningitis. But we're going to watch her and the Williams family story, and then we'll hear directly from Jamie.
Our child, Nick, in a period of hours, he went from a healthy, vibrant young man to being brain dead.
Once you get meningitis, you really can't fix it. It's too late. You might live, you might die. Who knows? I didn't know what it was, and it destroyed me. Physically and mentally, emotionally, in every aspect possible.
We had no clue.
I didn't know anything about meningitis. I knew nothing.
As I understand it, is a disease that can attack the brain, the spinal cord, or different body parts. And it's been proven that when you live in close proximity, the potential of contracting meningitis is a lot greater. We got to A&M, he was a junior, and it was unbelievable how many people responded to that kid and how many people absolutely loved him.
Nicholas was a loving person, very kind, and he had a contagious smile.
You don't realize how important siblings are until they're not there anymore.
I received a phone call at work, and they told me that Nicholas was in the hospital.
It was only 8 minutes after he was admitted that he went unconscious.
All we could do was hold his hand, kiss him, pray for him, and hope that he would come out. The doctors gave us hope. We're not going to count him out, so let's just pray, and that's what we did. But Nicholas never came out of it.
We wanted to give it time, give God time to work a miracle, because that's what it was going to be. And we gave it a few days, but unfortunately that miracle never came.
Being at UT, I had parties I wanted to go to Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. But I got sick on a Wednesday night. My body did emergency shut down. One day you're fine, and then the next day you're dealing with serious, serious decisions. My limbs were turning to black because my body cut down circulation because it was protecting its organs. I'm just being in an immense amount of pain. I dealt with my limbs being amputated. I came out and I put my life on hold and I stopped and I had to learn how to live again. If I had gotten vaccinated, I would not be dealing with my nightmare.
Nobody thinks that, anything terrible is going to happen to me or my family. But when it does strike, it is so devastating.
Not getting vaccinated in my brother's case meant death.
It seems like another routine, another errand that you have to do. But if you don't get the vaccine for meningitis, you are literally putting yourself at risk to die. It's a shot, and that's it.
They gave me a shot in my arm, and it lasted for 2 seconds, and I was done.
Prevent what's preventable. Get vaccinated.
Get vaccinated.
Please get vaccinated.
Hello, thank you everybody for being here and listening to our stories. Definitely very impactful and personal, definitely from my own experience. So my name is Jamie and I'm currently 26, and when I got meningitis I was 20. It was my sophomore year of college and I got sick. My 6-year mark is next week, actually. So it was November 12th when I was starting to feel ill. What? That's not... Okay, there we go. That was new slide added. Okay, so I'm basically here to tell you about my own experience of what I was going through. Meningitis is the #1 fastest killing disease. It's proved within my own case. It typically kills within 24 hours. From my original symptoms to when I was admitted was only 14 hours later, and I was facing serious symptoms. Originally it was small, where I was nauseous and couldn't retain any of my vomit. And it got progressively worse, but there was something different about that night. As I was going to the restroom and I was walking barefoot, my feet were sensitive to the tile floor to the point where it was painful. And since I was going so often to the bathroom, I eventually had to make a pallet on the ground because it hurt so much. And it even hurt for me to use the faucets because of the porcelain. Very bizarre, and yet didn't really think anything too serious of it. And then the next morning came, and it was terrible. The bizarre thing about it is that it was probably one of the more beautiful days in Texas. I remember the sun just really raining in on my room, and I felt like I was a hurricane. I couldn't walk normally. When I'm walking, everyone walks 1, 2, 3, even pace. I'm walking 1 and holding myself against the walls. I could barely hold myself up. I couldn't retain any warmth. I felt very, very cold. I was burying myself under blankets and was still cold. And then, luckily, I don't really put a lot of emphasis on this, but my sister did call me, and if she didn't call me, I don't know if I would have survived, because meningitis does act so quickly. And she called me. She goes to UT as well. And she's like, hey, do you need to ride to school? And I'm like, you know what? No school today for me. So do you think you could come over here and take me to the hospital? And I'm sorry, I do talk with a lot of comical inside of me. It's just always been my personality. But so my sister comes up, and I'm not opening the door like, welcome to my apartment. I'm literally left the door unlocked and I'm on the floor. I couldn't get up. She came in, she put her hands to her mouth and saw that it was very serious. I didn't know this, but she told me that I was turning blue just from being so cold. And I have asthma, and we kind of thought it was something asthma related, but it was definitely more serious. I was not going to the kitchen refrigerator to get water anymore because it hurt too much. I was starting to go to the kitchen sink, and then I stopped going to the kitchen sink because, again, it hurt too much to walk all the way over there, so I went to the bathroom. And then that's when my sister showed up and saw how serious it was. And by the time for me to exit my apartment to my car, I swear it took me like 20 minutes. Each step was so excruciating, and I was walking on stairwells, and when I got to the car, I did not know that that was actually the last time I was going to be walking with my own legs. And when I got to the hospital, I couldn't walk anymore. Sorry, I had to retain myself. I couldn't walk anymore. I had to get a wheelchair, be directly put to my door, and they wheeled me in, and like that, it was a hurricane another way. Just so many routine questions. A lot of people could see that it was very serious. And when I was on the bed getting maybe the IVs or just routine questions being done, I see beyond the chaos, and I see this doctor talking to my sister, and he goes, "Where's your mother?" And my sister goes, "Oh, she lives in South Texas. She can't be here right now." And he looked at my sister and goes, "Well, she needs to be here," with serious urgency. And at that moment, I swear, with all the chaos going on, everything went mute. She looked at me, I looked back. It's kind of one of the last memories I had with a conscious memory. Right after that, we both knew it was serious. Family was starting to come in. I wasn't aware because I was actually put in a highly medicated coma. But I would wake up from time to time, and I noticed something different. I would watch my limbs go from red to purple to black to literally rotting off my body. I was half alive in some aspects. This disease took over myself. As I was saying, I felt very cold, very weak, and it was because my blood was becoming septic. My blood was toxic. And so instead of pushing out all of my blood flow to my extremities, my body was like, "There's toxic blood in here, we're doing emergency shutdown because we don't want this toxic blood to go into your organs," which is why I became so cold and why my limbs were so sensitive and why I was becoming so weak, and which is why my limbs were eventually sacrificed to save my own body. So when I was admitted, I did not know I was going to be in the hospital for 7 months. Definitely, took me, I was out of school. It was almost at the end of that semester, November, and the school was actually really generous, and they allowed me to finish the semester whenever I could when I was in the hospital, but I was so weak. I literally had bandages on my hands the whole time. I could not serve myself food. I was so weak. When I first got in, I was incapable of lifting my arms over my head, and it was a big effort. I couldn't do it for 3 months. I'm going to show you some pictures. Keep forgetting about it. So here's are some pictures, additional pictures of what my limbs were going through. As I say, yes, there were rotting. I know it's not very pleasant to mention this, but I feel like the fact of sharing this does put in a real reality setting for people of how serious this disease can be. When I would touch my skin to skin or my hands to each other, it sounded like metal hitting metal. It wasn't soft. I felt like I had thousands and thousands of pounds of sand in me. Could not move. I had nurses moving me to prevent bed sores. Very crazy. One day I was in class. The next couple of days I'm facing this situation. And I did not know if I would survive. I think a lot of people had doubts, but we're all very strong. My support system was phenomenal. My mom was there basically every day, sleeping on a chair. Thanks, Mom. And it was crazy. Everyone was very supportive, and yet I did come out of it. So I'm going to show you some more pictures. at the end of my ordeals with the hospital, I ended up losing a lot of weight because I was not eating that much. I was on so many antibiotics, so many surgeries every week. I was just going through a lot. Eventually got down to 80 pounds and lost most of my hair. And for, I think, everyone, it's a big deal to lose your hair. And I just remember my mom was wheeling me. I don't know where we were going, and I saw my reflection in the window. I was like, oh my God, wheel back, wheel back. And it's just something so small could take such an effect. And the whole trial of what I was thinking, what I was going through was a whole other thing to think about what I would be going through after I got out of the hospital. But luckily, it was remarkable what we went through. I did go through physical therapy, 3 weeks inpatient, 6 months outpatient. It took me about 3 months to learn how to walk. But before I even learned how to walk, there was something remarkable that happened. We were able to go through and testify for a meningitis vaccine. Because when I was in the hospital, you hear these stories. I'm telling you a story that just sounds so unfathomable, but it happened. I went through this. And there was a lot of, why did this happen to me? And why am I going through my limbs just decaying? And it transitioned to, why does this have to happen to others? And so my family and I, we worked really hard, and we went to the Capitol, and we actually pursued for the Jamie Schanbuam Act, which is what CDC was recommending at the time. And it was for all college students living on public and private facilities in the state of Texas. And it passed, and it went through with flying colors. It was very amazing. And at the same time, this bill was tried to be passed 3 other times before, and it didn't work. Unfortunately, tragedy has to happen in order for something to go through the Capitol. So without, I'm obviously more than happy to be that person. So at the Capitol, we did have the Jamie Schanbuam Act pass, but at the same time, that bill did not protect me. I lived off campus, but it's what CDC recommended, and it worked. And then a couple years later, a boy named Nicholas Williams, he passed from the disease. And as you are aware, his father is here, and we've grown a really great relationship. One of my really good friends is his daughters. I'm going to hang out with her this weekend. But besides that, we were able to get our families together and do the bigger purpose, and to get all college students in the state of Texas to get vaccinated, because Nicholas lived off campus as well. And if there was a mandatory vaccine, his life would have been saved. And I'm very happy that we were able to work together and amend the law. And it's the Jamie Schanbuam and Nicholas Williams Act, and it passed in 2011. And thank you. And shortly after that, the first oncoming school semester, 325,000 students were getting the vaccine. Very cool, just to know, not just in the sense of like having success at the Capitol, but in a sense of lives are being saved. And it's so important because I didn't know what meningitis was, and if someone spoke to me, I would have been proactive. So I'm going to be really quick. I know I'm extending my talk a little bit. So there was also another chapter of me. Before I got sick, I was a commuter on my bicycle. I lived about a mile away from campus and would wake up every day, barely used my car, maybe once a week. And when I was in the hospital, obviously I have a lot of doubts. And I didn't think I'd be on a bicycle, but I did. Pretty cool. So when I was getting some of my prosthetics done, there was a man there, and he's like, hey, I know some other amputees. Why don't you come cycle with us? And I said, yes, I would love to. And before I knew it, about 5 bike rides later of me on my first time on a bicycle, I was at the Livestrong Challenge doing 12 miles. Very, very inspiring. I didn't know. Thank you. I didn't know that I could do that with or without legs, I would say, but I was able to do it, and just to cross the finish line is a very powerful experience. But I did not know what would happen next. So the next summer I was at a time trial, and if you are not aware of what a time trial is, obviously you are timed, but you have to go so fast that if you don't feel like death halfway, you're doing it wrong. Says my coach. So So, you get tunnel vision. It's what everyone goes through. And when you're done, there's this guy there. He's asking me about my bicycle and how it's adapted because I don't have fingers, so how do I brake? And to answer that, you just put the brakes on the front side and I just push into them. That is literally the only adaptation I have for my bicycle. But the reason why he was asking me was because he was a U.S. Paralympic cycling coach. And he later asked me to be a part of the national championship road cycling, and I won in my own division. Very cool. Never even had bike shorts before this. so I was really excited just to be a part of the team. So with that being said, he actually asked me to be a part of the Paralympic cycling team, and I competed in 4 events in Guadalajara and the Pan American Games. No, I did not win any medals, but a lot of personal records for sure. Without that being said, I do find this to be my passion, meningitis awareness. A lot of people are not aware of what this disease can do, and I do love getting my voice heard any way that I can within the Capitol or in the classrooms or whatever. Or at the newsroom or anywhere that will have a mic to my mouth, and I will gladly give the message. So I do have a nonprofit organization to do what I am doing today and to get the awareness out. And there is something else I did want to share with y'all. It holds very dear to my heart. If y'all are familiar with Ann Geddes, she did the photographs of the babies in the pots or as butterflies. Hopefully I can get a group head nod of who Ann Geddes is. Okay, world-renowned photographer. And she was actually part of a global campaign for meningitis awareness. And she took photos of survivors all over the world, and I was lucky enough to represent the United States. And I'm here to show you my photo. Loved everything about this photo, what it represents, and how far I have come, I would say. And I hope to pursue much more than just this. But a global effort is very powerful. I'm very happy to be a part of it. And just as an extra thank you to everybody here, I mean, y'all are the reasons why people are getting vaccinated and taking care of the public. And from me as a survivor of this disease, I thank you for what you all do, getting the message out there. We all are a team, and I appreciate working with y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. That was awesome. Yeah, thank you, Jamie, Micah, Chloe, for all being here. And I realize this session is emotional, and kind of coming off of this and going to more programmatic things might be difficult, but these stories just speak really powerfully to us, and I hope they serve to empower you and to remind you of why it is that you do what you do, and just to keep doing the good work. I don't think we have time for questions, but I'm sure that the families will be happy to stay up here and answer any questions. And just as a side note, if you're interested in using these videos in your educational efforts, we have a line of materials are available in the lobby. We have copies of the DVDs available. They're free. They're also on YouTube, so you can download them, share them as much as you want. And so I guess with that, I'll end. Thank you all very much.
So as we head into our breakout sessions that start at 3, I will remind you of what Dr. Offit said last night about the fact that we don't see so many diseases and the impact that they have. And that is part of the communication gap that we have. But we do have these stories, and we can see this. So carry this forward into your breakouts as you acquire more knowledge, more data, more statistics. Remember the emotional motivation that you have here to create change. One more hand for our panel. As you head into your breakouts, we know that you could not go to every breakout or break-in that you wanted to, but know that every session is being recorded. Every set of slides will be available on the website for this event. So know that you will have access to all the materials. You're in your sessions, you're back here at 4 o'clock. Go and get your learning.